It was supposed to be a shortcut. One of those desperate decisions made when exhaustion and hunger crawl beneath the skin. Tom and Laura had been driving for hours, the sun long gone, leaving the world a lifeless shade of grey. The GPS died somewhere back at the crossroads, where the last gas station clerk warned them, "Ain't nothing down that road but regret." They should have listened. Now, only endless cornfields stretched around them, silent and suffocating. The kind of silence that made your own breathing sound too loud, and then they saw it. A flickering neon sign barely visible through the mist. Miller's Diner, since 1954. The letters buzzed and sparked as if protesting their own existence. For a moment, they both hesitated. It felt wrong, like the kind of place you see in nightmares. Yet hunger, true, painful hunger, silences instincts. Tom forced a shaky grin. "We'll just grab a quick bite, that's all," he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. Laura nodded, her lips dry. They pushed open the diner's heavy door, the rusted bell overhead, screaming into the night. The inside smelled of stale coffee and forgotten dreams. Vinyl booths ripped at the edges, a counter lined with faded red stools, the floor tiles yellowed with age. Yet, something was off. No dust, no cobwebs. It was like time had stopped, preserving the place in perfect stillness. That's when she appeared. A woman, frail and pale, materialized behind the counter. There was no sound of footsteps, no shift of air. She was simply there. Her hair was brittle, grey as ash, and her eyes, they didn't blink. "Welcome," she rasped, voice dry like parchment. "Specials are on the board." Tom turned, expecting some greasy list of burgers and fries. But instead, what he saw sent a chill crawling down his spine. The everlasting hunger, second chance, mother's secret. No prices, no descriptions, just those three, written in a shaky, almost desperate hand. "What the hell kind of place is this?" Tom muttered, trying to force a laugh. Laura glanced at the woman. "Do you have something simple? Soup? Anything?" The woman's smile was too wide. "Only what's on the board." "Don't worry, dear. You'll leave full." They should have left. Every fiber of their bodies screamed run. But when your stomach is empty enough, reason fades. Hunger makes monsters of us all. Tom, rubbing his temple, chose second chance, the name tugging at something deep in his chest. Laura hesitated, but seeing Tom break, pointed at mother's secret. "Wise choices," the woman whispered. Then she was gone, vanished into the shadows without a sound. Minutes passed. 10, 15. Laura's nerves frayed with each tick of the old clock on the wall. "Why do I feel like we're being watched?" she muttered. Tom nodded stiffly, his throat too dry to speak. Finally, the woman returned, gliding, carrying 2 steaming plates. One, a thick, bloody steak. The other, a bowl of dark stew, rich and glistening with fat. Neither dish seemed real in a place like this. "Eat," she urged, eyes gleaming unnaturally. "It's what you came for." Tom's hands trembled as he reached for the knife. The meat cut too easily, almost like raw flesh. Blood, too red, too thick, pooled beneath. He hesitated. Then hunger roared, primal and overpowering. The first bite was heaven, juicy, tender, perfect. His eyes fluttered shut. "You have to try it, Laura. It's unreal." Laura, heart hammering, took a spoonful of stew. It smelled like home, warm, safe. She tasted, and for a moment, it was like being a child again. Her mother's stew. Impossible. Tears welled up. How How does it taste like my mum's? She's been dead for years. The woman behind the counter smiled wider. That's the secret, dear. We feed you what you miss most. But then, the taste changed. Metallic, sour. Laura gagged, pushing the bowl away. Something's wrong. Tom didn't hear. He was eating faster now, desperate, stuffing his mouth until meat juices dripped down his chin. Tom, stop, Laura cried. Please. Something's wrong. The woman laughed, a sound that echoed unnaturally. It's never about the food. It's about the hunger. It never ends once you taste it. Tom's hands clawed at his throat. I'm still starving, he gasped. No matter how much I eat, I need more. His skin paled, cheeks hollowing. Every bite seemed to drain him, turning him into a shriveled husk. Laura sobbed. What did you do to him? The woman leaned in close. He ordered second chance. That means he gets to taste life again. And again. Until there's nothing left of him. Laura stood screaming, slamming her fists on the door, but it didn't budge. The windows, once clear, were now black voids. There's no leaving hungry, the woman whispered. Laura collapsed to the floor, her body weak, stomach gnawing at itself. Let me go. Please. I didn't finish, she sobbed. The woman crouched, voice almost tender. That's why you're lucky. You still have a choice. Finish your meal, or stay, forever. Laura looked at Tom, skin stretched thin over bones, eyes hollow. Yet, he kept chewing, gnawing at invisible food, lost in madness. The woman's eyes gleamed. Every soul feeds this place. You feed, or you become the feast. Desperation took hold. Laura screamed, smashing the bowl to the ground. The stew splattered, dark, congealed, almost alive. For a moment, there was silence. Then the woman's smile vanished. You broke the rules. The floor groaned. Walls pulsed, breathing. Shadows shifted as the diner came alive. You owe us now, the woman hissed. Laura ran, but the diner twisted, warped. Doors moved, hallways stretched impossibly, and always the smell of that stew followed her, clinging, choking. Finally, Laura collapsed, sobbing. Please, I don't want to be hungry anymore. The woman's voice echoed around her. Then feed, find another, bring them. Only then will it stop. Weeks later, a lone car pulled off the highway. Another couple, lost, hungry. Inside, a pale woman stood behind the counter. Her eyes were dead now, her face hollow. The board was updated. The everlasting hunger second chance, mother's secret, Laura's gift. Somewhere in the shadows, a gaunt figure chewed, endlessly, hopelessly. And the diner? It was always open, always waiting. It was a Tuesday night that smelled of cold rain and wet asphalt. A night Robert Hale would remember for the rest of his life. The sky hung low, suffocating the city in a heavy mist. Streetlights flickered like they were gasping for life. Robert's breath came out in shallow puffs as he trudged down the sidewalk, his stomach twisting violently, begging for relief. 3 days. That's how long it had been since Robert had eaten anything real. A few crackers here, a stale cup of coffee there. But his last full meal was now just a hazy memory. His hands trembled, not just from the cold, but from that unbearable emptiness clawing at his insides. Hunger wasn't new to him lately. Since his transport company collapsed, he'd been fighting to stay afloat. Each day was a battle, but tonight, he was losing. he ended up in a grimy roadside diner, the kind of place where the fluorescent lights buzzed louder than the customers spoke. Peeling linoleum floors, cracked leather booths, and the smell of burnt coffee filled the air. Robert sat at the far corner, staring at a greasy menu he couldn't afford. Every picture of food felt like a cruel joke. The waitress threw him a quick glance, her eyes lingering on his tattered jacket before turning away. That's when he heard it, a calm, confident voice right beside him. "You look hungry." Robert startled. A man stood there, mid-40s, clean-cut, suit impeccable. His dark grey jacket seemed out of place here, but it wasn't his appearance that unsettled Robert. It was the man's eyes, calm, almost too calm, like he already knew how this night would end. Robert tried to laugh it off. "You could say that." The man smiled faintly. "No one should starve alone. May I sit?" Robert shrugged, beaten down. What did it matter anymore? The man slid into the booth effortlessly. "Let me buy you dinner," he said, his voice like silk. "Just company, no strings attached." Robert blinked. "Why?" "Because I know what it feels like. To be hollow. To ache in places you didn't know could ache. Let me help. Tonight." Robert's stomach roared in protest. Pride crumbled. He gave a weak nod. "Yeah, all right." The man's hand was already extended. "Mason." The waitress seemed surprised when Mason ordered steak, potatoes, greens, and dessert. Robert could barely keep his hands from shaking as the plates arrived. The smell alone nearly broke him. He didn't speak as he devoured the food. Each bite felt like salvation, the flavors exploding on his tongue. Butter melted into the mashed potatoes, the steak's juices rich and sinful. Tears blurred his vision by the time he reached the cherry pie. He didn't care. He hadn't tasted food this good in years. Mason simply watched, sipping his coffee, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "You see?" he finally said. "Hunger humbles us. Strips away everything, pride, shame, leaves only truth." Robert chuckled darkly. "Truth is, I'd sell my soul to feel full like this again." Mason's eyes sharpened. "Would you now?" He leaned in, voice lowering. "What if you didn't have to sell it? Just lend it, temporarily?" Robert froze. "What the hell does that mean?" Mason smiled wider. "There are ways, deals, arrangements. You'd never have to feel hunger again, Robert. Not ever." Something in Robert's gut screamed at him to run, but his stomach was silent, content for the first time in days. "What's the catch?" he whispered. Mason's expression softened, almost fatherly. "No catch, just a pact. When I call, you answer. Until then you live, you eat, you thrive." Robert stared at his empty plate. What was left to lose? Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and shook Mason's hand. Deal. The following weeks were surreal. Groceries appeared at his door, crisp bills stuffed in unmarked envelopes. The first time he opened one, he laughed. Hysterical. Disbelieving. Robert ate like a king. Full meals, warm beds, and for the first time in months, no dread gnawing at his gut. But dreams came. Terrible, vivid dreams. He woke drenched in sweat, heart pounding, the taste of blood thick on his tongue. Some nights he dreamed of running, chasing something through the dark. Other nights, of teeth sinking into flesh, the warmth, the sound, the taste. The first body turned up 2 streets over, ripped apart, unrecognizable. They said it was an animal, some wild dog. Robert sat frozen, staring at the news. His fingers trembled as he wiped sweat from his brow. He swore he'd been home, in bed. He swore he hadn't moved. And then Mason appeared. No knock, no sound, just there. "You're feeding," Mason said simply. "It feels good, doesn't it? The fullness." Robert staggered back. "What the hell is this? What did I agree to?" Mason's gaze darkened. "You asked never to feel hunger again. You didn't ask how." Robert tried everything. He bolted the doors, boarded the windows, but each morning, the same. Another body, another nightmare. The police started asking questions. Neighbors started locking their doors. He stared at his own reflection, skin pale, eyes sunken. Yet, he was never hungry. His body was lean, but his stomach never growled. Even as he watched the world fall apart around him, he felt satisfied. Mason visited him often now, sitting across from him with that same cold smile. "It's not just you anymore," Mason whispered. "We're bound. You feed, so I feed." Robert's hands trembled. "Make it stop, please." Mason's eyes softened, almost pitying. "You can't stop what you are. Hunger is part of you now." The final straw broke when he saw the missing posters. Faces he recognized, people he'd spoken to, laughed with. Robert fell to his knees, sobbing. "I didn't mean for this." "But you chose it," Mason replied. "And now, you live with it." The last night came with the sound of sirens and screams in the distance. Robert barely noticed. He was hollowed out, a shell of a man. He hadn't felt hunger in weeks, but he hadn't felt anything else either. Mason appeared, dressed as sharply as ever. "It's time." "For what?" Robert croaked. "For the final feast." They walked together, silent shadows down blood-stained streets. No one stopped them. No one could. When Mason pointed, Robert obeyed. Faces blurred, names forgotten, blood sprayed, flesh tore. Robert didn't remember how long it lasted, only that when it was over, he stood alone, drenched, trembling. Mason's voice was soft. "You're free now, Robert. No more hunger, no more dreams." Robert turned slowly. "What happens now?" Mason smiled. "You live, forever full, forever damned." And as dawn broke over a silent, empty city, Robert Hale realized that the worst hunger wasn't in the body, it was in the soul. It started like one of those harmless stories you read about in the local news, buried somewhere between town hall announcements and cheap grocery ads. A man named Robert Hayes, 52, a quiet and well-mannered truck driver, had gone missing on a route he'd driven 100 times before. No foul play suspected, no accident reported, just gone. What made it strange, what clawed at people's curiosity, was that his truck had been found parked neatly along a deserted stretch of Highway 37. Engine cold, keys still in the ignition, the cabin door wide open, and most unsettling of all, the half-eaten sandwich sitting on the dashboard, as if he'd been interrupted mid-bite. People around town couldn't stop talking about it. They whispered in the diner, "What kind of man leaves food behind like that?" Someone even muttered, "That's not hunger, that's fear." Robert's brother, Mark Hayes, couldn't accept the police theory of a simple walk-off. "My brother? Nah. He never skipped a meal, let alone left food unfinished." With no leads and the authorities losing interest, Mark started digging through Robert's last routes. He uncovered gas station receipts, timestamps, and security footage, all leading to that last known stop. Miller's Rest, a tiny family-run motel with a barely visible sign rotting on the side of the highway. When Mark visited the place, The stale air smelled of damp wood and faint grease. The old man behind the counter barely looked up. "Room 6, he grunted. "Stayed the night, but left before breakfast." But something was off. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that everyone at the motel was hungry. Not for food, for something else. Eyes hollow, cheeks sunken. Even the old man's lips were dry, chapped, cracking as he spoke. Against the clerk's protests, Mark pushed into room 6. The smell hit him first. Rotten, sour, but layered beneath that, a faint hint of burnt meat. The room was pristine, too clean for a place like that, except for the table. A plate sat there, covered with a metal lid. Trembling, Mark lifted it. Cold. A perfectly cooked steak, untouched, still bloody at the center. And beside it, Robert's watch. Mark's stomach tightened. He staggered back, his mind racing. Why the hell would he leave his watch? He scanned the room and noticed something carved into the wooden table. Claw marks, or words. Leaning closer, he read, "Hunger changes a man." Mark stormed back to the lobby. What the hell happened here? What does that mean? Hunger changes a man. The clerk flinched, eyes darting. "You shouldn't be here, boy. That's old business." Robert was warned. Warned? Warned about what? The old man's voice cracked as he leaned in. "There's a patch of land out there, past the motel. Folks call it the Hollow. Dry, cursed soil. Been empty for decades. No birds, no animals, nothing. They say, once you cross it, you'll know hunger. The kind that gnaws at your bones, until there's nothing left but the craving." Mark couldn't believe what he was hearing, but part of him, the part that smelled the burnt flesh in that room, knew it was real. Mark should have turned back. Every nerve in his body screamed at him, but he drove toward the Hollow, the sun bleeding into the horizon. As he crossed the brittle earth, the sky seemed heavier. His stomach growled, and a headache pressed against his temples. He found Robert's footprints first, a trail heading deeper, then vanishing. Further on, Mark found something else, scraps of clothes, a shoe torn at the sole, and then, the worst of it, bones, human, scattered, gnawed clean. Mark froze. A whisper seemed to glide through the dry air. "It's not the hunger for food. It's the hunger for escape. From yourself." As night fell, Mark couldn't move. He sat there, clutching his stomach, the pain unbearable. It wasn't normal hunger. It was something wrong. He thought of the steak, of the sandwich, of Robert's unfinished meal. He understood now. Robert didn't run. He stayed, because he couldn't stop eating. From the dark, a figure crawled toward him, thin, skeletal, skin clinging to bone, the face barely human, but the eyes, Robert's. "Mark," the thing hissed, voice like sand scraping metal. "I stayed too long." "I ate, and ate, but it's never enough." Mark screamed, stumbling backward, but there was no escape. The Hollow wasn't just a place, it was inside him now, gnawing, craving. They found Mark's truck 3 days later, parked perfectly straight on the side of Highway 37, engine off, windows cracked open, just enough to let the dust in. The first officer on the scene said it felt wrong from the moment he stepped out of his cruiser. There was no sound, no wind, no birds, not even the hum of insects. He shivered as he remembered, like the earth itself was holding its breath. Inside the truck, the scene mirrored Robert's disappearance almost exactly. Keys dangling from the ignition, Mark's wallet on the passenger seat, and there, sitting ominously on the dashboard, was half a sandwich. The bread had gone dry, the meat inside already greying. A bite mark, and nothing else. Not another clue. What really broke the search party wasn't the truck. It was the smell. Not rot, not death. Something empty. As if hunger itself had a scent. Sterile, cold, metallic. One of the younger deputies gagged, stumbling back. I swear, it smelled like someone starved to death right there. But there's no body. They found no signs of Mark nearby. No blood, no struggle. Just his tracks leading into the hollow. And then, nothing. Like the land itself had swallowed him whole. Later that night, as they gathered back at the station, shaken and pale, the oldest deputy, Tom Willis, sat in silence, staring into his coffee. Finally, he spoke, his voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. I heard something when I stood by that truck. Could have been the wind, or my mind playing tricks. He looked up, eyes glassy. But it wasn't. It was his voice. Mark's, real faint, coming from nowhere, said, I'm so hungry. Please, make it stop. The room fell silent. No one dared to laugh or dismiss it, because deep down, every single man in that room believed him. The town buried the case like they always did. No press, no search parties. They knew better. Highway 37 was sealed off a week later. Locals whispered that land should have been burned long ago. But some things, some hungers, don't die with fire. The last entry in Mark's notebook, found in his truck, was just one shaky sentence. It's not the starving that kills you. It's what you become once you're fed.